And now it's time for us to discuss more of these headlines in simple keywords. Adam joining us via Zoom. Good morning, Adam.
Good morning, Lena. Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday to you, too. We're not forcing Happy Friday Eve down our listeners' throats.
Yeah, I've given up on it. I think it's time we let it go. It's not catching on, and you just gotta know when to give up. And that's just I
Cut
don't
your
want to annoy
losses.
people. Yeah, cut my losses exactly.
And we move
Yeah,
on.
exactly. Yes,
I don't
moving
know.
on.
I kind of like it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I was trying to get people, up people's spirits, but I don't know. It hasn't done much. It hasn't done much for me myself, so I came up with it. So I think, yeah, I'm just gonna let that one in. Mature a bit more in the drawer, if you will.
Thank you for joining us, Adam. Let's jump into our keyword news portion of the day. We're going to try to clarify these major headlines for our listeners. It does look like President Yoon has busy weeks ahead, APEC, and then Europe. Our first keyword of the day.
APEC.
So President Yoon will visit San Francisco come next week for the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, or the APEC Forum. He's also scheduled to travel to Europe in the coming weeks. So what can we expect?
Yeah, so he's got quite a busy diplomatic schedule lined up for the rest of the year. It basically wraps up the year's kind of number of overseas trips that he's been making, and he's made quite a few at that. Now, Yoon and his wife will depart next Wednesday for a 3-day visit to San Francisco. He'll attend the summit of the 21-member APEC Forum and hold bilateral meetings on the sidelines. This will be Yoon's first participation at the APEC summit since taking office. The presidential office added that President Yoon plans to emphasize Korea's contribution to the clean energy transition and overcoming the climate crisis. He'll also attend the second session, or leaders retreat, as it's called, the next day. They are expected to talk about the need for APEC members to work together to restore multilateral trade, strengthen supply chains, and establish what the presidential office called a digital moral code. There is also speculation that Yoon could meet the Chinese President Xi Jinping, as well as the Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida as well, on the sidelines. Now, details on sideline meetings will be announced at a later date. Yoon also host a meeting with Korean residents in San Francisco. He'll also attend an APEC CEOs summit and meet with young Korean leaders working in the cutting-edge technology field. And as is often the case, he'll also be joined by a business delegation, the names of which haven't yet been released.
And then, of course, in the coming weeks, he's scheduled to visit several European countries, including the Britain, France, and the Netherlands. What does his itinerary look like for that trip?
Right, so he's not going to get much of a rest from returning from San Francisco. He returns from San Francisco on November 18th. Just 2 days later, he'll be leaving for London to pay a 4-day state visit to Britain at the invitation of King Charles. Yoon will actually be Britain's first state guest since the King's coronation in May. Now, the visit will come as the two countries mark the 140th anniversary of relations this year. Yoon will be met with a welcoming ceremony that will involve Prince William and his wife. The ceremony will be followed by a luncheon at Buckingham Palace, hosted by King Charles and attended by some 50 people. Yoon will also be giving a speech before the British Parliament, the House of Commons, and then attend the state dinner at Buckingham Palace. The third day of Yoon's visit, the president is scheduled to hold a summit with the Prime Minister of the UK, Rishi Sunak, and discuss ways to strengthen strategic cooperation in a wide range of areas. The two countries will also adopt a Korea-Britain Accord outlining the direction of future bilateral cooperation, kind of similar naming to what Yoon and Joe Biden had in their summit earlier this year. Now, from London, Yoon will then head to Paris to make a final pitch for Korea's bid to host the 2030 World Expo, in Busan. Now, he plans to meet with officials from member states of the BIE, the body in charge of overseeing the Expo. Of course, there is a vote happening later this month, in fact, that will decide on who the host will be. So the clock is ticking, and of course, Yoon is making that final-ditch effort to try and get Busan to host the event. Now, next month, Yoon will end the year's series of overseas trips with a visit to the Netherlands on December 12th and 13th at the invitation of King Willem-Alexander.
All right. Again, a busy diplomatic calendar for the president. That's how he's going to end this year. And then come January, that final push to get those general election votes. I can see the focus shifting.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. We'll leave it there for now so we can move on to our second keyword of the day.
Yoon-Mattarella Summit.
All right. Speaking of boosting bilateral ties, this was President Yoon's sit down with of course, the Italian president. Leaders of Korea and Italy have agreed to strengthen cooperation in advanced technologies during a summit held right here in Seoul. Particular focus on hydrogen, AI, space, the sort of future-oriented industries. Can you run us through the details?
Yeah, so including this summit in Seoul and his Yoon's trip to Europe, a lot of diplomacy happening with Europe in the final months of the year. Now, Mattarella is on a 3-day state visit to Korea at Yoon's invitation. The visit comes ahead of the 140th anniversary of establishing diplomatic relations between Korea and Italy next year. So comes at a similar time since the UK had diplomatic relations with Korea as well, so similar in its length. Now, in a joint news conference after the summit, Yoon and Sergio Mattarella said they agreed to cooperate in the high-tech industries of hydrogen, AI, and space. And Yoon noted that Korea and Italy have excellent manufacturing capabilities and cutting-edge technology. He added that there is great potential for growth in trade and investment between the two countries as well. And they also pledged to continue close collaboration on North Korea issues, including denuclearization, human rights, and other international concerns as well. They also agreed to work closer on cultural and people-to-people exchanges, as well as economic issues. And fittingly, the two countries signed an MOU on industrial cooperation between the two countries. Yoon said it will serve as a foundation for promoting the next generation of industrial cooperation. Both sides also signed an MOU to expand joint research in basic science as well. And Yoon has also accepted Mattarella's invitation to visit Italy and maybe planning for a trip to Rome. So that could be another potential addition to his a schedule for Europe. Whether it happens this year or next remains to be seen, but yes, certainly being anticipated.
All right, with that, we move on to our third keyword of the day.
Trilateral defense meeting.
So South Korea, the U.S., and Japan have held their first working-level talks on ways to boost cooperation in space security. They also agreed to hold a defense ministerial meeting soon. What's the latest on them?
Right, well, the working level talks was a follow-up, basically, to the August summit that was held among the leaders of the three countries. Now, the talks were attended by officials from the foreign ministries of the three nations, as well as those from the White House Space Council and other related government agencies. A joint press release read that the dialogue focused on issues related to space security, particularly regarding threats in the space domain and national space strategies and the responsible use of space. And it added that they discussed ways to promote safe, secure, and sustainable use of outer space and enhance the resilience of space systems. Now, they also agreed to hold a meeting of the three countries' defense chiefs to discuss coordinating responses to North Korea. The meeting has been planned to coincide with the visit of the U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin to Seoul for the Security Consultative meeting scheduled for Monday. Now, reports suggest the meeting may take place before the actual SCM, so a lot of eyes are on that. Now, if realized, it would be the first meeting between Austin, Shin Won-sik, and Minoru Kihara since they assumed office. Now, one of the primary agenda items include establishing and operating a real-time system for sharing missile warning data on North Korean missile launches. So, eyes will be on if the actual meeting takes place and if that missile warning data or sharing system is signed between them.
All right, and on to our next keyword of the day.
Electricity price hike.
So KEPCO plans to raise the electricity price for larger companies and sell off more assets amid mounting debts and losses. As you can imagine, because that's not a fundamental solution, there's criticism from both aisles of the political circles. What's the latest, Adam?
Yeah, so certainly some cost-cutting measures. There'd also be a reduction of the workforce as well. KEPCO says its debt crisis amounts to around 201 trillion won, and the CEO says that it has reached a financially unsustainable limit for the company. Now, under its self-rescue plan, the company will increase electricity rates for large-sized companies by 10.61 per kilowatt hour from today. Now, however, KEPCO has decided to freeze the electricity rates for small and medium-sized firms and the public, of course, in light of especially government measures to try and ease financial burdens for the public, especially in the times of high interest rates and high inflation, and what has already been a few electricity price hikes already for the public as well. Now, among industrial users, those classified as large businesses account for approximately 42,000. That's just 0.2% of the total power consumption users. However, in terms of power consumption itself, they make up nearly half, which is expected because they are large firms. They run big factories and infrastructures and facilities. Now, with this rate increase, KEPCO expects to increase its sales by 400 billion won this year and 2.8 trillion won next year, although there are some experts that are saying that still isn't enough to kind of cover the losses that KEPCO has been going through. And also, as part of the restructuring plan, over 2,000 employees will be laid off and assets will be sold, including shares and some real estate. Voluntary early retirement program will be implemented. And high-ranking officials will return a part of their wage increases for the next year as well. Additional cost-cutting measures involve optimizing the organizational structure by merging similar divisions. They're basically going to be reducing their headquarter kind of operations and networks. So they're going to be reducing the number of head offices and the divisions within that and merging ones that are basically doing the same job. The company will also sell its plot in northern Seoul as well, a very large plot that it has, including its education and training facility, in order to try and conjure up as much cash and liquidity as possible to offset those losses.
Hard times for KEPCO trying to make do with what they have. Let's move on to our final keyword of the day.
Hostage negotiations.
So Qatari and U.S. officials are attempting to work out a deal between Israel and Hamas for the potential release of a dozen more hostages held in Gaza. Now, I mean, increasing outcry has been coming out over the scale of civilian suffering on the Gaza Strip, but really no quick solution for this humanitarian pause. What's the latest, Adam?
That's right, no quick solution indeed. Things are just getting more intense and hostile, and things coming out now, they're just reports, nothing's confirmed at the moment. Qatar is reportedly mediating negotiations between Israel and Hamas. Now, talks reportedly revolve around the release of 12 hostages, half of them Americans. This would be in exchange for a 3-day ceasefire. AFP reported that the pause would enable Hamas to release the hostages and to give Egypt some time to deliver humanitarian aid. Egypt is also reportedly involved in negotiations as well. Now, however, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reportedly reaffirmed his previous stance, saying if he does not receive the hostages, there'll be no ceasefire. Reports also claim that Netanyahu rejected a proposal from US President Joe Biden to halt hostilities for 3 days in exchange for the release of the hostages. So it certainly seems like everyone apart from Israel and Hamas are wanting to get some ceasefire or negotiations in place, but it's just the two sides engaged in fighting that are kind of standing their ground and not budging and remaining adamant on their respective stances at the moment.
I mean, Israel forces have maintained and reiterated time and time again they will strike at Hamas when necessary. This, unfortunately, is at the monumental cost of civilian lives. And I think that's the images we're seeing halfway around the world in different parts, calling for that humanitarian pause. But you're right. I mean, I don't think there is room for negotiations between Hamas, a terrorist force, and Israel.
That's right. It certainly is a bit of a delicate situation and one that is very divisive as well. And although you'd think that it shouldn't be, because of course there will be negotiations with a terrorist group, or what many are labeling as a terrorist group, but it doesn't really hide the fact that there are a lot of civilian casualties and a lot of hostages involved as well, and just overall just damage and carnage that's happening along the Gaza Strip. But with Israel not budging from its stance as well, certainly does prove difficult, especially with US allies like Israel ignoring allies' calls as well, especially with powerful ones like the US. So, yeah, we'll have to see if there is any wiggle room and any breakthrough with the hostilities. It looks unlikely for the time being, but
Efforts
we'll
are
have to
still
wait
being
and see.
made.
Efforts are still being made, yeah.
Thank you very much, Adam, for today's coverage. We'll see you tomorrow.
You're very welcome. See you tomorrow.
If you're listening to our program using the podcast service, just a reminder that we do go live Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. Korea Standard Time. So tune in and help us make the show more informative by giving us your input. See you bright and early on Good Morning Seoul.